They didn't just vanish, they left behind something chilling. A final recording. A whispered warning. A shadow standing at the edge of the frame. These 5 people disappeared under the most mysterious and terrifying circumstances imaginable. But before they were gone, each of them heard something. A sound no one could explain. What connects them? A voice? A signal? Or something older, something watching? You're about to hear stories that don't just raise questions, they echo in the dark. Welcome to Unsolved Archives, where we delve into the hidden, the mysterious, and the unanswered. Share your thoughts in the comments. Your insight could be the key to unlocking the truth. The fog at Briar Hollow. In the mist-covered town of Briar Hollow, nestled deep within the rain-soaked forests of Oregon, there was a long-standing superstition among locals: never enter the woods when the fog is thick enough to swallow the treetops. It was a warning passed down through generations, but by the mid-90s, most teens saw it as little more than spooky folklore. October 14, 1996, was supposed to be a simple hike. 5 seniors from West Haven High School, Zach, Dana, Miguel, Leah, and Tyler, had planned to venture into the forest for a weekend project documenting the region's native wildlife. It was part of a state-sponsored scholarship competition, and the group was determined to impress. They brought tents, supplies, 2 camcorders, and a handful of disposable cameras. Dana's older brother dropped them off near the trailhead that morning and promised to pick them up 2 days later. The fog rolled in faster than expected. By evening, the light mist had become a dense shroud. The trees, once sun-dappled and green, now stood as looming shadows with no depth. The group made camp beside a clearing and built a fire. Miguel, the self-declared documentarian, filmed the group goofing around, laughing about the fog witch legend. Zach, the most skeptical among them, mocked the old tales. Fog doesn't eat people, it just makes you look dumb bumping into trees. Sometime after midnight, Tyler left the tent to relieve himself. According to Dana's account from the video logs recovered later, he never came back. The group assumed he'd gotten lost and began calling his name, flashlights darting through the trees. But the fog had grown so thick that even the beams seemed swallowed after a few feet. Zach swore he saw a figure dart between the trees, barefoot, wearing white, but no one else confirmed it. The laughter from earlier was long gone, replaced by rising tension. By morning, the fog still hadn't lifted. Miguel filmed the group forming a search party. His camera captured whispered arguments and visible fear etched into their faces. Leah began muttering that they should leave, that Tyler was gone, and they had to save themselves. But Zach insisted they couldn't abandon a friend. They split into pairs to widen the search, Miguel with Dana, Zach with Leah. Only Miguel and Dana returned. Dana's screams were the first thing caught on the final stretch of footage. She ran into frame, hysterical, repeating Zach's name over and over. Miguel, panting, followed. "Something's in there," he said, voice trembling. "It's not a bear. It's like it waits just out of reach. I saw it watching us. Just eyes. White eyes." They fled back toward the clearing. Leah and Zach were gone. Only the campsite remained, torn apart, as if something had ransacked it. Dana dropped the camera as she ran. The final image before the tape cuts to static is a silhouette forming in the fog, tall and still, no face, just an outline, indistinct, but terrifying. 2 days later, Dana's brother returned to the drop-off point. He waited for hours, growing more and more panicked. When the forest rangers began the search, they found the camp mostly intact. Only Dana's discarded camera and a few torn scraps of clothing remained. No signs of struggle. No blood. No Tyler. No Miguel. No Leah. No Zach. And no Dana. Authorities combed the area for weeks with dogs, helicopters, and hundreds of volunteers. Not a single body was ever recovered. The forest yielded nothing but silence. The camera was sent for analysis. Investigators were disturbed by the timestamps. They didn't make sense. Gaps of time, 20, sometimes 30 minutes, were missing, skipped as if something had erased them. Audio static in some clips formed patterns, with a voice faintly whispering in the white noise, "Come closer." The state eventually closed the hiking trails around Briar Hollow. The story was quietly buried in local papers. Families were left with no answers, just a memorial plaque at the trailhead engraved with the students' names. Over the years, hikers and thrill-seekers drawn by the story claimed strange encounters, unexplained whispering, the sound of crying deep in the woods, even seeing figures walking just at the edge of visibility. One camper, who barely escaped the forest after getting lost in the fog, claimed she saw a young man standing still among the trees, mouth open in a scream that made no sound. When asked to describe him, she said, "He looked like he was trying to warn me. Like he was trapped." Today, Briar Hollow is a forgotten dot on the map. The town has all but vanished, its population dwindled to under 30 people. Locals say the fog never really left. It just waits. Exit 72. It was an unassuming stretch of road along Arizona's Interstate 15, barren and sun-bleached, surrounded by nothing but desert and silence. Exit 72 barely registered on most GPS systems. If you asked locals in nearby towns like McCoy or Los Lunas, they'd tell you the same thing: don't take that ramp. It doesn't go anywhere anymore. But in the summer of 2008, the Archer family, David, a traveling salesman, his wife, Naomi, and their 11-year-old son, Evan, vanished after doing just that. Their last known stop was a gas station off Exit 65. Surveillance footage showed David fueling their blue Chrysler Voyager, Naomi buying snacks, and Evan excitedly thumbing through a comic book. Nothing seemed out of place. But dashcam footage recovered from their vehicle's cloud backup, automatically uploaded thanks to a setting David had installed, captured what happened next. The footage shows the family driving calmly down the highway. The sun was beginning to set, and long shadows stretched across the asphalt. Around the 18-minute mark, David is heard saying, "We'll pull over at the next exit, let Evan use the restroom." Naomi agrees. Moments later, a faded green sign reading, "Exit 72, Teller's Cross, 1 mile," appears. The turnoff is barely marked. The ramp slopes downward sharply, disappearing from view. The family takes it. From that point on, the footage gets strange. They drive into a deserted lot. The horizon shimmers from heat, but the footage flickers oddly. Evan comments that it looks like an old western town, and the camera catches a few dilapidated structures, a gas station with a rusted sign, a boarded-up post office, and what looks like a diner with grime-caked windows. But no cars. No people. Not even birds. The footage continues for 6 minutes. Naomi repeatedly asks, "Are we sure this is a real place?" David tries to call someone but has no signal. He says it's probably just an old town that never got torn down. They park near the diner. David and Evan get out while Naomi remains in the car. The dashcam records David peering inside the diner windows, and Evan tugging at the locked door. Then, at minute 27:14, the video glitches. The color drains slightly, and a faint low hum becomes audible. Evan turns suddenly, looking toward the camera, his face confused, maybe frightened. The frame then jerks once. Just a moment of distortion, like a skipped tape. When it restabilizes, Evan is gone. David spins around, shouting his son's name. Naomi bursts out of the car, panicked. The camera begins picking up an echo of static, subtle at first, then louder. Naomi's voice breaks as she screams Evan's name again and again. David runs behind the diner, vanishing from view. Naomi follows. The car remains. Engine off. Radio dead. Air still. At 28:41, the camera glitches again. And then, silence. The rest of the footage, 12 more minutes, shows the unmoving landscape. The diner. The empty lot. A single plastic bag drifting across the road, caught in a breeze. Authorities were dispatched after Naomi's sister reported them missing the next day. Based on the last ping from David's phone and the uploaded footage, the search party was sent toward Teller's Cross. But when they reached Exit 72, the ramp wasn't there. There was no exit. Nothing existed between exit 71 and exit 73, just smooth asphalt and desert stretching in every direction. Investigators combed aerial maps, believing the road may have been decommissioned or closed after construction. But satellite data showed no such structure had ever existed in that area. No diner. No buildings. No ramp. They even brought in retired transportation planners from the State Highway Department. None recalled any town named Teller's Cross. The footage was reviewed by experts. There were no signs of tampering. No metadata inconsistencies. Yet what haunted analysts most wasn't the disappearance, but the last 5 seconds of the dashcam footage. At timestamp 41:59, the camera picks up movement, something crossing just behind the car. A figure. No details. Just a humanoid shape, too tall, arms dangling low, head slightly cocked to one side. It moves slowly, deliberately. Then, as it passes out of frame, the footage ends. The FBI never made a public statement. The Archer family was listed as a cold case, last seen near Interstate 15, suspected vehicle malfunction. Their relatives were left with no closure. No bodies. No explanation. Conspiracy forums exploded with theories. Some believed the family stumbled into a military experiment. Others thought it was a dimensional rift, a time slip, or worse. Paranormal groups tried to organize searches at the location, but found only dry brush and heat waves. A few tried driving the route, hoping to find a way through. One woman claimed to see the green Exit 72 sign appear briefly in the distance before disappearing as she approached. Others say it only appears to those it wants. To this day, drivers report strange phenomena near mile marker 239. Blinking radio static. GPS systems looping in circles. Some even describe an overwhelming urge to stop, without knowing why. The Mirror Lake Disappearance. Nestled among the forested hills of Vermont, Mirror Lake earned its name not just for the glassy stillness of its surface, but for its eerie ability to reflect the sky with such perfection that it often left onlookers feeling disoriented, like they were standing above another world. It was a popular site for summer camps and hiking retreats throughout the 20th century, but few people talk about what happened in July of 1952 at Camp Silverpine. Fewer still even remember it happened. That summer, Camp Silverpine was operating at full capacity, with nearly 60 children and a dozen counselors living in its rustic cabins. Among them was Elsie Trent, a 24-year-old music and arts counselor beloved by her students. With her long red hair and calm demeanor, she had a way of making everyone feel at ease. She played guitar in the evenings, wrote songs with the children, and was known to take long walks around Mirror Lake after lights out. On the night of July 17th, the camp held its annual talent show. Lanterns were strung from trees. Parents visited. Campers performed skits, recited poetry, and sang off-key songs. Elsie was scheduled to perform last, ending the night with a song she'd written called Still Waters. She walked behind the curtain holding her guitar, smiling, waving at the crowd of campers, counselors, and visiting families. She never walked out. At first, everyone assumed there was a delay. Someone went backstage to check. No one was there. Her guitar case was found open, her guitar still inside. Her flashlight, which she'd always kept clipped to her belt, was lying on the ground, bulb smashed. The camp immediately launched a search. The woods behind the stage were combed for hours by counselors and parents. Nothing. When police arrived, they brought dogs and boats to scan the lake. Divers went down. No sign of Elsie. No torn clothing, no footprints, not even a broken branch to indicate where she might have gone. But then, the singing began. That first night, just after 3 a.m., a camper named Josh Rader woke up crying. He said he heard Miss Elsie singing from the lake. At first, the counselors assumed it was a nightmare. But then more campers reported the same thing. Songs, familiar ones, drifting across the water late at night. Some swore it was her voice, the same melody she used to play in the evenings by the fire. The same voice they heard in their cabins just before sleep. One child, Laura Gentry, claimed she saw someone standing on the lake at dawn. A red-haired figure with her arms raised, face pale and featureless. Another camper insisted they saw her under the water, floating just beneath the surface, eyes open. The authorities investigated thoroughly. A formal report was filed, citing unresolved disappearance likely due to voluntary departure or accident. But the locals didn't believe it. Neither did the camp staff. The place began to feel watched. The animals grew restless. The birds, which once filled the mornings with noise, fell silent around the lake's edge. Camp Silverpine closed quietly in 1953 and never reopened. Years passed. Trees reclaimed the cabins. The path to the stage disappeared under moss and bramble. But the stories never stopped. In 1978, a hiker named Dana Cole wandered onto the grounds and camped by the lake. In her journal, recovered from her abandoned tent, she wrote, "Something sings at night. I can't tell if it's in my head or real. But it's beautiful. And wrong. Like a song I knew as a child, but twisted somehow. I thought I saw a woman in the water. She smiled at me and didn't come up for air." Dana was never found. Her boots were discovered by the shoreline, pointing toward the lake. In 1999, paranormal investigators snuck into the camp ruins. One of them, a man named Jared Baum, filmed their experience. His footage was uploaded online years later. In it, the team approaches the lake with EMF sensors and thermal cameras. Around midnight, strange interference affects their equipment. They hear faint strumming, like a guitar, and a voice singing a low, slow version of Still Waters. One of the crew breaks down crying, saying he feels called. The footage cuts suddenly. Jared was the only one who left the camp. He never spoke publicly again. Even now, Mirror Lake remains quiet, untouched. Locals discourage visitors. GPS systems often malfunction near it. Some believe the lake acts as a barrier between here and somewhere else. Somewhere colder, quieter, where voices echo forever beneath the surface. They say Elsie Trent never left. She just stepped sideways, through a crack no one else could see, into the reflection. And every summer, she sings for the next one to follow. The Grey Ferry Vanishings. Along the icy edge of Maine's Penobscot Bay sits the decaying skeleton of Grey Ferry Island, a jagged crescent of rock, sand, and wind-blasted trees. Once home to a modest fishing village and a ferry dock in the early 1900s, it's been uninhabited since the 1960s. Locals still speak of it in hushed tones, but rarely by name. Most simply call it the Quiet. The disappearances began before records were kept, but the most infamous case, the one that broke the island's back, took place in November of 1961. The Callahan family, Gerald, a retired postal worker, his wife, Marlene, and their two sons, Kevin and Scott, moved to the island in the spring, determined to restore the old inn and open a small guest lodge. Gerald had inherited the land from a cousin, who'd died suddenly the previous year. He told his friends it would be a quiet place to grow old. The town of Wyndham, just across the channel, still operated a daily ferry, and the boys could take the boat to school. Everything seemed normal. At first, neighbors on the mainland occasionally received letters from the Callahans in those early months. Simple updates about the restoration, the beauty of the sea, the quietude. Kevin wrote to a school friend about long walks among the pine groves, and how sometimes the fog came in so thick it felt like the island was floating alone in space. Scott, the younger boy, mentioned odd things too: shadows in the fog, sounds at night, things he said moved without wind. On November 2nd, the ferry captain, Edwin Pike, made his routine morning trip to Grey Ferry to pick up the Callahan boys for school. What he found disturbed him so deeply he quit 2 weeks later. The Callahan house sat still and dark. The dock was empty. The windows were closed, the curtains drawn. No footprints in the frost. Captain Pike walked up to the front porch and knocked. No response. He opened the door. Inside, everything looked untouched. Breakfast plates on the table, chairs tucked neatly, a kettle warm on the stove. A single red mitten, belonging to Scott, lay on the floor near the door. He searched the house. No signs of struggle. No broken locks. Beds were made, clothes in closets. It was as if the family had simply stepped out. Or evaporated. The authorities launched an extensive investigation. Coast Guard searched the shorelines. Divers swept the bay. Helicopters circled the rocky cliffs. Not a trace. Not a body. Not even a shoe. But there was something odd in the house. An audio recorder, reel-to-reel, found on Gerald's desk, running with half a reel left. The tape was sent to the state police for review. What they heard left even hardened detectives unsettled. The tape begins normally. Gerald's voice, dated October 28th, discussing plans to fix the roof. Marlene and the boys laugh in the background. A minute later, Gerald mentions strange sounds, like whispering coming from the sea at night. Not wind, he says. Not gulls either. It's like someone standing outside the window, speaking in a language I don't know. At minute 6:43, there's a long silence. Then a sound, wet, clicking, like footsteps on damp wood. Gerald's voice returns, hushed. They're here again. The final words on the tape, spoken with a slow dread. They're at the water. Standing still. Just watching. Marlene says they're not real. But Kevin says they smile. Then static. Local legend holds that the island is cursed, though no one agrees on the source. Some say the land was once a burial ground for an ancient tribe and was disturbed when colonists built atop it. Others whisper about the drowned, spirits of those lost to shipwrecks who return when the fog comes in. More fringe theories suggest a rift in reality exists just offshore, a place where things slip through, things with faces but not quite human. In 1993, an amateur historian and diver named Hal Brigham tried to reach Gray Ferry by kayak. He wanted to document the abandoned Callahan home. His final transmission over radio, "I see something on the dock. I think they're waiting." Hal's body was never found. Only his kayak, washed ashore on the mainland with deep scratches along the hull, like something had clawed its way over the side. To this day, Gray Ferry Island remains officially off-limits. The ferry dock has been dismantled. Satellite images are often distorted over its location. Some locals claim it's the fog, that the dense cover over the island plays tricks with visibility. But fishermen report strange lights at night. Some swear they hear children calling from across the water. And occasionally, a mitten or boot will wash up, worn, small, and always red. Those who still live in Wyndham have one rule: never sail near the island after dusk. Because sometimes, the island sings. And sometimes, it sings back. The last broadcast from station WZRD. In the northern hills of West Virginia, where pine-covered ridges stretch for miles and cell signals vanish into the valleys, there once operated a tiny independent radio station known only to locals as WZRD 98.3 FM. Its call letters were unofficially said to stand for Wizard Radio, and it was run by a man named Roy Keller, an eccentric recluse who lived in a camper parked beside the broadcast tower. WZRD was a throwback to an older time. Roy played a mix of forgotten jazz records, vintage horror radio shows, and spoken-word poetry in the dead of night. His late-night program, The Midnight Loop, had a cult following among night shift truckers and insomniacs. He never played advertisements. He didn't interview guests. His voice, low, gravelly, and steady, became a kind of haunting comfort for those traveling through the dark Appalachian roads. But in November of 2011, Roy Keller disappeared. And what came after has never been explained. It began with a call. On the night of November 17th, during a storm that knocked out power across much of the region, WZRD continued to broadcast. The generator hummed. A thunderstorm crackled in the background as Roy played his usual collection of ghost stories. But then he stopped the tape mid-track and addressed his listeners directly. "There's something out there tonight," he said. "Something's walking the tree line near the tower. I'm not sure what it is." He laughed nervously, then added, "Probably a bear." but it's been circling the station for the last hour. Big. Slow. Doesn't sound right. He paused. It's whispering. That was the last coherent thing anyone ever heard from Roy Keller. Over the next 15 minutes, the station's audio feed degraded. First came a high-pitched feedback tone, then a distorted voice, possibly Roy's, speaking words no one could decipher. Technicians later described it as backward speech layered with interference, almost like multiple voices talking at once, out of sync. Then the music started. But it wasn't Roy's usual fare. Instead, a slow, looping melody, off-key, like a child playing an old music box, began to play. Over it, the distorted voice returned. This time, it repeated the same phrase again and again. He's looking in. No one could confirm how long the broadcast continued. Some say it ran for hours. Others say it never stopped, just changed frequencies. The next morning, sheriff's deputies visited the WZRD trailer. They found the broadcast tower still running, powered by the backup generator. The trailer door was open, swinging slightly in the wind. Inside, coffee was still hot in the mug. Headphones lay on the mixing board. Roy's coat was hanging on a hook. But he was gone. No struggle. No blood. No sign he'd left on foot. Just a strange symbol drawn in chalk on the floor, a circle bisected by a line, flanked by 3 dots. The sheriff's department filed a missing person report and shut down the station permanently. WZRD's frequency was officially deregistered in 2013. But the story doesn't end there. In the years since, people have reported hearing strange signals while scanning through static-laced FM bands at night. Always late. Always alone. A few say they heard Roy's voice, soft, distant, warped, reading poetry he never aired during his lifetime. Others say they've picked up a signal that plays only one phrase, over and over. Do not listen. It sees you when you do. Paranormal researchers have tried triangulating the source, but the signal always vanishes when traced. A YouTube channel once claimed to record a full WZRD broadcast in 2017, but the video was deleted within days, and the uploader vanished from the internet completely. Local legends now say the hill where the WZRD tower once stood is cursed. Hikers report auditory hallucinations, static, music, voices calling their name. Some say Roy never left. Some say he was taken. A shortwave operator named Lena Bray claimed to pick up Roy's voice in 2019. She transcribed his words, shaking as she read them aloud. It's not a place. It's a frequency. And once you hear it, it hears you back. WZRD never aired again. But on certain nights, if the clouds are low and the fog drifts across the hills like breath, you might catch something on 98.3. But if you do, turn it off. And whatever you do, don't answer if it speaks your name. Every case adds a new layer of mystery, leaving more questions than answers. Which one lingers in your mind, and what's your take on what really happened?